Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Robert Swartwood here. Tonight, I am joined by a New York Times bestselling author of 9 novels, with his 10th, The Unknown, coming out next week. His books have been published in basically every single country, it feels like at this point. He's a #1 bestseller in Brazil, I just learned earlier tonight. That's right, it's your favorite writer of mine, Riley Sager. Riley, how the heck are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. So when I initially had reached out to you, because we had discussed I feel like a couple years ago at this point. It's been, God, yeah, it's been a while. We had really done a deep dive into the becoming of Riley Sager. Because again, it's not a state secret, but Riley is a pen name.
Pet
You've
name.
published
Yeah.
under different names in the past. And you're just one of those writers who just kind of never really gave up. And I guess we can kind of discuss if you were ever in a place where you were ready to give up and maybe, you would not be sitting here right now. You would not be selling out these events, and we will go from there. But basically, what I would do, because your 10th novel is coming out next week. I have not. I have it here. Oh, you have the actual copy there.
I have the
I just
actual
have the
copy with the special.
Dubby
Yeah, you can't
arc.
really see
You actually have the
the
nice, like,
the
yeah, look at
fancy
that.
edges, but this is the thing that impressed me most. The the actual designed, actual physical book, which was very impressive to me.
Yeah, I want to get into this, the whole how much thought was put in. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of thought, but I mean, at what point were you guys, because you've done, and we're kind of jumping ahead, but Home Before Dark, if I remember correctly, the hardcover was glow in the dark.
It was glow in the dark. That was. We'll get to that when we get to
Yeah,
Home
yeah,
Before
yeah.
Dark.
But
Yeah.
like otherwise, you've never really had that, special, like, deckled edges, or like they never really did any type of like this seems to be, because of number 10, they went all out.
Exactly. Yeah. It's because it's book 10. We knew from the start before I wrote a word of it that it was going to be a special book. Like that was my goal. I called my editor and I was like, okay, it's book 10. I want to do something big and special, and this is going to be a segue into like the conversation with all the other books. But I said like I want it to feel like I want to honor all the books that came before it. So I want it to feel like I took all of my previous books, put them in a blender, hit puree, and then poured out a new book that's completely original and a new story, but it has references and it has themes and settings and characters and maybe some plot points similar. Like I wanted it to feel like the quintessential Riley Sager book.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're definitely going to get into that. But I want to, again, just kind of do mini deep dives into like Final Girls leading up to it. So we're going to get really here some, behind the scenes, real geeky writing stuff, kind of like, just like, how certain books came about, the why you decide to write them a certain way, everything else like that. But I do have a confession to make before we start. Okay. My very first book that I read of yours was Final Girls, and that was probably about a year or two after it had initially come out. And I loved the book. So here's how do I want to say this. Sometimes I'll read an author's books, and just that particular book makes me a lifelong fan. Like I'm thinking of like, Bel Canto by like Anne Patchett, like The Keep by Jennifer Egan, The Poet by Michael Connolly, Dark to Take My Hand, Dennis Lehane, like I could go on and on and on. But certain books you're like, oh. And so I started, like, I don't know about you, I collect books. My wife hates it. I have in my office, there's just stacks and stacks of books all over the place. So I started buying your books, but then, there's only so much time. I haven't had a chance to really read any of them until I knew we were doing this, and so I crammed all your novels in the last couple of weeks
Oh God, you're probably so sick of me.
with audiobooks and then also the hardcovers. So I had a huge Riley Sager cramp. And so I had noticed these little references, of course, as you're, like you're doing these little Easter eggs where maybe people who are reading, out of order or whatever else might not do. Was that conscious as you were writing it? Like, where you wanted to start doing these Easter eggs, or does it just like it was a natural thing? Like, and again, I don't want to talk about book 10 because we're going to get to that towards the end, and I assume there's probably references to all the different things, but like, yeah, when you got to the second book, did you already plan the idea of it's a Riley Sager shared, kind of like Stephen King, like it's all in one big universe.
No, it wasn't until The House Across the Lake, which was book 6. And it was just something I did on a whim where I knew a character was going to mention that she went to summer camp.
Yeah.
And so I was like, it's going to be the summer camp from The Last Time I Lied. Why not? Like it was that was really it. Like, yeah, she went to that camp. That makes sense. And then there's a reference to Lock Every Door in there too.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
and
the
so
building.
like that's what it started, where I just thought like, oh, that's going to be fun to maybe some readers will notice that and be like, oh, I recognize that name, and that's it. And I've done it here and there in other books as well. But with the unknown, like there are some
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
straight up
like in Middle of
mentions
the
of
Night,
things.
there's specifically they talk about, these kids who died in this cabin and then these other kids who disappeared at the lake and yeah, or at the camp. So all right, well let's because we have a lot to go over. So let's start with Final Girl. So again, I don't want to get into kind of how final well we can talk maybe a little bit about this, but again, you had published other books or whatever else. Publishing is
Hmm.
is not is not an easy business. It just wasn't really working out. You decided to reinvent yourself. um at Were you planning to basically walk away before you decided to finally do this, or like at
Yes,
what point were you in your career, were you, and then can you talk about just where, just maybe I know you talked about this a lot because of Final Girls, but like, just like what was that initial kind of seed for you, and then you just hit the ground running. If I remember correctly, you wrote this pretty quick.
I did. Yeah, it was my last ditch effort. I'd been dropped by my publisher. I'd been laid off from my newspaper job. I had nothing going for me. Literally, I had nothing, and I was just so discouraged. And I emailed my agent and said, like, listen, we tried. I think I might be done here. And she was like, I just want you to have one good experience because I had not had a good experience at all. And she's like, what do you have? What are you thinking of? And it was Halloween 2014, and I was baking a jack-o'-lantern cake in the middle of the afternoon because again, I had nothing going on in my life, and I was watching Halloween, the movie. And that's when I was like got the idea. I was like, "Oh, I know there've been sequels to Halloween, but wouldn't it be cool if like there was a book about like Laurie Strode 10 years after?" And which and there's a bunch of them, and how they're dealing with this, and like that was like the seed of the thing. And so I wrote a one-page synopsis, sent it to my agent, and she was like, I know like 5 editors who would buy this right now, so write it as fast as you can. I wrote it in 9 weeks. And because again, nothing going on in my life, so I had plenty of time, and it really was my Hail Mary pass. Like if this didn't work out, my plan was to go back to school and get a degree in library sciences because I was working in the kids section of the local library at the time, part-time for minimum wage. But I really liked it. I'm like, I could do this. So the world lost a children's librarian, but they gained a thriller writer. And that's
That's right, and we're all the best, and we're all the better for it. So, when you, and again, I know we discussed this probably before, but let's do a quick recap. Are you somebody who kind of like Jeffrey Deaver, where you have to have a very meticulous outline before you get going, or you have that basic idea, you sit down, kind of like the Harlan Coben, you kind of know where you're headed, but what happens along the way, it could change. Like basically, how much of this book was initially in your head? Did you know you were going to be jumping back and forth through time? From Pine Cottage to the present day, and like that, like ultimate twist at the end. Did you already have that in mind, or did that come about as you were writing it?
no, I had it all planned. That one I outlined pretty thoroughly. I used to do more outlining in the past than I do now. Now, I mean, I don't go in blind. Like, I do have to, before I really write a word, I have to figure out, like, okay, what's the basic plot? What's the main character? What's the setting? And what's the twist? And then, there'll be surprises along the way, and I'll discover things, and like a new twist will present itself. But with Final Girls, I did know sort of like, here's where it starts, and here's where it leads to.
Yeah. In terms of character names, I find that you give your character names pretty unique names, names that typically can stay with you. How
Yes.
much thought is going into trying to come up with these names? Because sometimes you'll read a book and you'll finish it, and at the end you're like, I don't remember who any of those, the names of any of those characters. But like Quincy, I mean, like how do you, yeah, like how much thought goes into that, or like are there other names that maybe you try beforehand, and then maybe halfway through the book you're like, you know what, we have to change this name.
No, I'm sure there's one book where like halfway through I'm like, yeah, this name isn't cutting it, but not for the main character.
Mm,
Like because like the trope of the final girl, one of the things that they have is that like, oh, they have memorable names, or they're girls that have boys' names, like Sydney in Scream. Laurie Strode is not a boy's name in Halloween, but like they're memorable names, and so like I wanted to sort of add a name to the final girl lexicon, basically. And so I'm like, what's an unusual name that really stays with you that could have been like a final girl? And that's like, I don't know where Quincy came from, but I'm like, that's a good one. That sticks with me. So there she
yeah.
is. And Quincy Carpenter, and obviously a nod to John Carpenter is her
Yeah.
last name.
So, all right, so let's move on to book two. Now, when you got the book deal for Final Girls, it was, I'm assuming, a two book deal. Publishers typically like to do
No, it
that.
was just one.
No, it was just a one book deal.
Just one book deal. They did
Oh, okay.
not
So,
have the highest hopes for that book. I mean, they gave me it was a bigger advance than I'd ever received before in my life, but like
right.
no one was expecting, least of all me, for it to break out in the way it did. Like, I think all plans were to be like, okay, this is going to be a nice mid-list selling book that does okay. And, but then, Stephen King weighed in, and that changed everything.
Yeah, Stephen King says the first great thriller of 2017 is here. Final Girls by Riley Sager. If you liked Gone Girl, you'll like this. Where were you? Do you remember where you were when you got that word, when you learned that Stephen King had praised your novel?
I was in a hotel room in Pennsylvania. It was the day after Christmas. I was visiting my family, and the book wasn't coming out for like another like 7 months. So no, this was not on my radar. It was on no one's radar. And so we get back from the hotel after spending all day at my parents' house, and I got a message from Jennifer Hillier saying, "Just saw Stephen King's tweet. Oh my God, congrats!" So I like was scrambling to Twitter, like, what did he say? Like, what is going on? And I saw that, and like, honest to God, like, I jumped up, I'm down on the bed in the hotel room, and then I was like, I need a minute. And so like I went outside, and I just stood outside this hotel in central Pennsylvania crying with joy because I knew that this was going to change things.
Yeah.
And boy, howdy, did it change things.
And so this wasn't one of those where the publisher got the blurb to put on the book. This was one where he read a early book and then he decided to tweet it, which honestly I feel is a little bit more impressive, because this is like, oh, it's almost like unsolicited, where he's like, I,
Yeah,
I like this so much. I want to make sure I let everybody know.
he was under no obligation. Like he just read it and was so impressed that he just tweeted about it. And then my publisher, of course, like reached out to his people and were like, can we use that as a blurb? And they were like, Steve says sure. And so I'm like, great. Thanks,
Love it.
Steve.
So, all right, well, let's go. Okay, so you were okay. So that was a one book deal. Okay, I've always been under the impression that was a two book deal. So, at what point did they? I mean, at that point, once you sold that, were you already starting to think about a book two, or because I know we've discussed this in the past, you had written a second book for something, then it got burned because the publisher decided, we're not going to publish it. So,
Right.
what was the next step? Like, how early did you then start, working on this?
I mean, there was quite a lot of like when it's like your first novel or like, a first novel under a new name, like there's a long lead time. So like Final Girls, I had finished. It was edited and approved by my editor in something like, I'm going to say like February or March of 2016. And it didn't come out until July of 2017. So that was a big stretch of time
Yeah.
in which I could futz around with a new book. I mean, because we knew, like, okay, they seem to like you. They will probably want another book from you, so write another book. And, like, I forget when the deal, like, I wasn't finished with it before the deal was made. It wasn't like I had to write a whole book and then submit it to them. But it was, like, I think, like, the synopsis where we sent it to my editor. And she was like, yes, here's a new one book deal. So
Had you
that
pitched
became the last
anything
time I
else,
lied.
or was this always, or was the last time I lied always kind of the what you envisioned as the second book?
No, I had a lot of trouble thinking up of follow-ups to Final Girls. I started and then abandoned two books because I didn't think that they were quite, what's the word I'm trying, like they weren't quite like Final Girls. You know what I'm saying? Like they
Yeah.
were a little bit too much of a departure. And I was like, I think I need to have as my follow-up book, something that's the same but different, so to speak. And
Yeah.
so then I got upon the idea of like, oh, these girls went missing from a summer camp. That's a good idea. I can do that. The trouble though is I was halfway finished writing The Last Time I Lied when Stephen King's tweet happened.
Hmm. So then you got inside your head?
It was the best thing that ever happened to me, and it was also one of the worst things because I was paralyzed. I'm like, Stephen King is going to read what I write and he's going to judge me. And so I just froze and I really struggled to finish that book. And it was a bit of a shambles. It required a lot of rewriting. A lot of like whole chunks of that book were just ripped out and new things were put in. And
Yeah. Can we talk about? I mean, it's been so long now. I mean, this was your second novel. Your 10's coming out, so we might be getting a little bit into like spoiler alert territory for people. So if you've not read this yet, maybe kind of go walk the dog real quick. What was the initial, like, how different was your initial draft or whatever to what became? And like, can you talk a little bit about like what were the changes?
well, one, I didn't know who done it.
Okay.
Like I was
I
I
love
was
it.
halfway through with the book and I still didn't know, like everyone likes the big shocking twist at the final, at the very end of that book. I didn't know what that was. Like I was halfway through and I'm like so I was just kind of like floundering and spinning my wheels because I didn't know where I was going. And so when I finally figured out, it was such a relief. I'm like, "Oh my god, I can do this." So I think that showed in the writing of it, like where I was just like meandering all over the place, all over that camp. I was just like, but the who did it in the present day that changed.
Mm,
Um, there were also like I added later like some characters who weren't in the initial drafts, like just to add some red herrings and some suspects because there weren't really many suspects. It was a hard book to get through because like everyone thinks like the first book is hard. It's really the second one that is killer because you have to prove yourself all over again and show that, like, okay, the first time wasn't just a fluke. I can do this.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember Alex Finley talked about how the Night Shift initially was not going to be the second novel he did. He was working on a different book and it just wasn't working out. And so he ended up pitching his publisher that book. And that one really, he thinks his career was better for it. That had he done the other book, it probably would have fizzled out. So totally makes sense with what you're saying. Um, so Camp Nightingale, was that great name? Was it initially always Camp Nightingale, or did you have other ideas, or was it one of those things where, like, once you thought Camp Nightingale, you're like, yes, that's it?
It was it. I'm like, what's a good name for camp that's like would be a real camp, but also sounds a little, just a tad sinister. And so, like, Camp Nightingale was what I landed on. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's the camp.
And then we talked before on the previous video a little bit about the use of second person. I'm a huge second person fan. I love when it's utilized, especially when it's utilized really well. And I think you had said before that it was the one Harlan Coben novel, the I think The Innocent, that you had seen it done previously that gave you the idea of using the second person. Had you from the very beginning, using the second person, essentially kind of a prologue, interlude, and then an epilogue? Was that always the idea, or as you were writing the book, did that come in later? Because
No, that
because
was
you
that
do a
was
really good
always
job where, and again, a little bit of a spoiler alert here, you start out making it think like, oh, these missing girls are, in the past when we find out that it's so like yeah, I mean, was that always the plan as from like when you started to like when you started writing, you had the idea of this prologue, or did that come later?
no, that was always the plan. Because I wanted to do that little switcheroo where I'm like, how can I do this to have a flashback that's not really a flashback? I was thinking of Lost, actually, because the show Lost does this wonderful thing about midway through the series where, because it was always flashbacks, and then there's this one episode where you think it's a flashback with Jack, and then Kate pops up, and you realize, like, oh my god, this is when they're after this. Happens after they got off the island, and it just blew the whole show up and put it in a whole different direction. I'm like, that's so cool. I want to see if I can do the same thing. And so, second person was really the only way I could do that to sort of trick the reader and to be like, you think you're reading a flashback, but you're not.
All right, so then let's move on to Lock Every Door. Well, first of all, actually going back to, I remember Final Girls was your title. Was the title The Last Time I Lied? Like, because I know we had this discussion before in terms of, ultimately the publisher is going to do what the publisher is going to do. They might decide, oh, we think the book better would be served to have this title. Um, was that your title, or like how did that title come about? The Last Time
Oh,
I
the
Lied.
the title battles I've had with my editor and my publisher. No, it was originally going to be called Lake Midnight.
Hmm.
And my editor really wanted something more in the vein of like Pretty Little Liars. And so, like, my mandate was like, lie needs to be in the title. And I'm like, okay, let's try to figure it. So there was so much back and forth before we figured it out. Like, okay, this one kind of works, I guess. Um, I don't know if it's a better title than Like Midnight. It's now the title of the book, so it's now in my head, like The Last Time I
Yeah.
Lied. But
Well, was the two truths and a lie always part of the actual narrative? Though I
it
mean, that
it
was part of.
was, and I
Okay.
wanted to call it Two Truths and a Lie, but there was another book with that title, I believe, that had just
Okay.
come out not too long ago, and so yeah, it was. That was when I learned, like, oh, publishing sometimes isn't as easy as you think. Or like sometimes
Yeah.
they don't like the title you give them.
Um. So the cover here, Final Girls, Last Time I Lied, and then Lock Every Door. I don't know if we discussed this last time, but there was for several of your titles, there was kind of like a trend. I don't know if they were trying to make it part of your brand to have kind of like the little hash marks.
It was
When did
definitely
that come
branding.
about where they were like, okay, this is going to be kind of a thing? Because I think I'm looking at your other books. Like Survive the Night has it, but that's basically it. It looks like they kind of went away from that with the hash
Yeah,
marks with the
they wanted bold colors, primary colors, and like big title type. Um, but what we started realizing was that people thought that they were like a series.
a series. Yeah, I could see that. That makes sense. Yeah, that's kind of always the issue, I guess, in terms of branding. So sometimes, yeah, people might think it's a series. All right, so okay, so you write the second book. Like, when did you start getting then the two book deals? When they were like, okay, we want to keep this guy around for a while. This was
This
the
one,
first book and then two book deal.
this
So
was
let's
the
talk
two
a
book
little bit
deal.
about the seed. Like, how did this one come about? And the same thing too, where you kind of do the same thing with, like the really good misdirection with like the now chapters and then six, and then, so you start 6 days later and we kind of start bouncing back and forth and then we get the reveal of the present day. Um, yeah, can you talk a little bit, what can you tell us about this?
I'm really proud of this book. This is, I mean, I get asked all the time, like, what's your favorite book? And I don't have like a favorite, but I'm really proud of it because I wanted to do like I had something very specific in mind. I wanted to emulate, in a sense, this dread of Rosemary's Baby. I love the book Rosemary's Baby. I love the movie Rosemary's Baby. I love this feeling of how well do you know your neighbors? And is this apartment building safe? And what's going on here? And I can't like just I just wanted that like sense of urban dread because like with Final Girls and The Last Time I Lied, it was all about like these things happened in remote areas.
Yeah.
And like let's do
Yeah, this
something
is
in the middle of the
right in New
city.
York City.
Yeah, let's do something right exactly where the Dakota is located.
Did you
Like,
I mean, so is there a specific building that
oh,
you
it's the
modeled
Dakota.
the? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
People ask me like, is the Bartholomew real? And I find it like such a strange question on one hand because I'm like, no, like think of what happened in that building. No, this is not real. But at the other time, it tells me like I really did a good job by making this building feel like it could exist in New York City.
Yeah. And at the
But
time, and yeah, go ahead.
well, I knew sort of like the structure that I had in my head, and I was outlining and outlining and outlining. And this is one where I was like following the outline to a T. And about a third of the way into the book, I had this weird sense of like, okay, I'm following the outline, but it doesn't seem to be working anymore. And I just kept following this outline, even though I'm like, I think the book might be better if I did this, but the outline says this. And finally, I'm like, dude, you wrote the outline. You can change the outline.
Yeah.
And
Can you
so
talk about like what did the outline initially want you to do?
just the plot was different. Like I had the main character, Jules, like the original version, like she's walks out of the building one day and someone like pulls her aside and is like, "Hi, do you live here?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm an apartment sitter." She's like, "My sister Ingrid is missing, and she was an apartment sitter in this building. And so could you help me find her?"
Mm,
And that's how she like got involved in like trying to figure out what happened to this person named Ingrid in this building where apartment sitters are vanishing and why. And it
yeah.
just it it was such an
There's a little
unnecessary
day,
step.
yeah,
Yeah, because I'm
yeah.
like,
Day
why
Machia.
doesn't she just meet Ingrid herself in the hallway and
Yeah.
become friends with her? And it was just such a weird thing, like why I was adamant that this had to be the case. And so I like halfway through, I just stopped and like kind of started from scratch again.
But
And
was the
I was
real,
proud
yeah,
that I figured it out
yeah. How far into the book were you until you had to start from scratch
about
until you had
halfway.
to kind of, oh
Yeah.
wow. Okay. Um, and then was the like ultimate reason for everything always the same thing, or did that ever change? Because you did a really good where you started, one of the misdirections you did, and I remember like this was one where I was listening to it. I remember listening to it at one point being like, "Oh, come on, don't, don't, don't go into that direction."
Please don't
But
have it
then you
be
did not.
witches.
It was all
Don't have it be
misdirection.
witches. Right.
Yeah.
No, I knew right away. Um, and this was, I mean, maybe we'll be spoiler alert a little
Spoiler
bit.
alert.
I was at the eye doctor, and I was like just flipping through an old issue of Time magazine, and there was like this 2-page article about how in India rich people were paying poor people to pose as their cousins so they could get kidneys.
Do you find that oftentimes like ideas, people are always like, where do you get your ideas? Usually it's just like, for at least for me, it's always just like life in general. But oftentimes I might see a headline or I might read something or see something, and it's like it sticks in the back of my head, being like, huh, maybe, and then it kind of goes from there.
Yeah, that one I was like, oh, that's really good. What if this whole that's a book right there to have like this whole building where the whole point of the building is to do this. And yeah, and I'm super proud of the book because it's exactly what I envisioned. Usually with a book, when you start, you have an idea of what it's going to be like, and by the time you finish, it's absolutely different than what you envisioned. This one, it was the book that I like aspired to write,
Yeah.
and I'm very proud of that one.
And then R.L. Stein called it my favorite thriller of
Yes,
the year. How excited were you? I mean, the Stephen King thing was huge, but how for R.L. Stein to give you a blurb?
that was bonkers. Like to get a blurb from him and a blurb from Ruth Ware. That was like my first interaction with her. Was like writing like this very like shy like message on Twitter like, "Hi, could you read my book? Are you interested? Could you give a
Wait, so
blurb?"
it wasn't even you had her email or whatever? Like this was on Twitter where
This was
essentially
on
anybody could
Twitter.
see it?
Yeah, yeah. No, not no no. It was a
Oh,
DM.
okay,
It
so
was
it was like a private message. Okay.
yeah. It was a private
Okay.
message.
Wow. Very cool. So let me ask you this. So, okay, so you're already then your first two book deal with Dutton. And at that point, New York Times bestseller, if I remember correctly, your second book was an instant New York Times bestseller. How are things like international? Were you starting to get a lot more, deals? Like, were you really starting to be well known in other countries?
No, the opposite. Final Girls made a splash internationally.
Hmm.
I got paid almost as much in the UK as I did for in the US. It was like a bestseller in the UK. It was like I think like one of the biggest selling debuts that year in the UK. And the last time I lied tanked in the UK.
Mm,
And I had a bad feeling because the concept of summer camps, that's not a UK thing. And it's not really
yeah,
an
I can see that.
international thing. It's a very American thing. And so lots of countries were like, yes, we'll publish Final Girls. And then they got their hands on The Last Time I Lied and went, what is this?
So did that then start affecting your thinking moving forward when you were coming up with ideas to be a little bit more what is going to work not just in America but everywhere else?
No, it was more like, okay, I guess I'm an American author. Like there was no sense of like because I mean like to use the UK as an example, it's a very odd, interesting industry there. Like you think that there's like going to be like a direct translation across the pond. There is not. They like have their own homegrown authors. They have like their hot genres. Like what is big here isn't always big over there and vice versa.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of gave up on being big overseas. Whereas like I'll just write my books for an American audience and that's fine. I mean,
Okay.
now my books have been published in like more than 40 countries. So like they're resonating somehow with
Yeah.
certain areas, but not all of them. It's strange to get like some countries, all my books are published there. In other countries, maybe like one or two. It's very weird.
Yeah. All right. So let's get, so, well, then I guess my question is, so Lock Every Door, did you have a different title initially for that?
Oh yeah, it was The Apartment Sitter,
Yeah, no, they
which
went, the publisher made the right decision.
yeah, but we didn't know what to call it, and so
Yeah.
we were just like emailing random words at each other for like days, and finally like some this combination of Lock Every Door came up, and we're like, ooh, that's good, that works. But here's the
Yeah.
thing, and people don't realize it until I mention it. There's only one door, and she locks it. Like there's no like
Yeah.
it's
Well,
it's
yeah. It's still a much better title than The
it's a
Apartment
great
Sitter. So,
title, but it
yeah.
doesn't quite match. And I had a meeting. Um, maybe I'm saying too much. I had a meeting with Hollywood regarding that book recently, and they said, "What would you do different?" And I'm like, "I'd put more than one door so the title would actually make sense." Like that's what I would do. I would add multiple doors to this apartment.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So at what point though, at what point do you start thinking of the next book and maybe even the book after that? So like, Home Before Dark, when did that idea start coming into your head? Or do you just really focus on whatever book you're working on and then once you turn that in is when you, okay, what am I going to start working on next?
It's once I turn it in. Like it's my schedule is normally um and we'll just use like current like the book I'm writing and almost finished with right now. I start usually January 2nd. I have to turn in a draft to my editor the day after Labor Day. And then there there's the editing process, there are notes, I go back, revise, more notes, such and such. We have to have a finished, approved by my editor draft by Christmas, just so we can meet the next summer pub date. And
Did
so,
Final Girls, like, have you stayed on the same, like, have all your books come out around the same time of year? All, like,
yeah,
all the
the
first nine?
unknown is a bit of an outlier in that it's August instead of early July or mid June.
Hmm.
And we did that because it's a pretty Halloweeny book. It's more of an autumnal book than like a summer book, but they
Yeah.
still wanted some summer sales.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we're like, first week of August, we'll still get some summer people, and then it will hopefully be on new release shelves until Halloween.
Yeah.
And so,
So, Home Before Dark, for people who do not know, this cover glows in the dark. Like, were you aware? I mean, what kind of conversations were that where they were like, we want the cover to glow in the dark?
they didn't tell me, but they thought they told me. And
Okay.
so one day I was actually in New York City because I was about to have lunch with one of the people who was working on at the time, it's not in development anymore, but there were people at the time working on a TV series based on The Last Time I Lied. So I was having lunch with one of them. And on my way to the restaurant, I get an email from like the publicity person with just this video of like the Home Before Dark cover and then like the lights going out and the letters glowing. And I wrote back like, "What is this?" And they're like, "It's your cover." And I'm like, "What's going on with it?" And they're like, "It glows in the dark." And I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "We told you this." I'm like, "You did not tell me this. I'm a child of the 80s. I know glow in the dark. Like, I would have remembered you telling me this." And so it was just
Yeah.
like this bonkers, mind blowing surprise. And the downside, though, is then, COVID happened, and so like few people got to like know about it because no one was going to bookstores at the time. Like it came out when COVID was like at its peak, and so it's kind of a bummer. There was like not much of this wonderful like discovery period of like, hey, this book glows in the dark.
Yeah. Well, okay, so again, going back to like what was the seed of this and how much did you know? Because this was a very unique book in, just the way you tell the story with the flashbacks being her father's book and very cleverly. I've seen it described as like a supernatural thriller, and maybe you don't want to discuss this, where like what's real and what's not real, but the way I took it, at least, is the supernatural aspects are not really you know what I mean? Like, just it was very, very well done. Let me just say that, okay?
Thank you.
But like again, how much did you know going into it? Because there, again, it was very, and you do this with a lot of your books have a lot of different twists, and I don't know, I just felt like this one like was like pitch perfect throughout the entire thing.
This one, I was listening to a podcast called Stuff You Should Know, which I recommend to everyone because it's a great general interest podcast. And they had an episode on the Amityville Horror. And I really liked the idea of because like the Lutz family had kids. And there were kids involved. And I'm like, my God, these poor kids. What must they have gone through their entire lives? Like as being part of this hoax. Because I mean, come on, it was a hoax, everyone. The Amityville Horror was a hoax. Um, and so I thought that's a really cool character. And then what if she goes back to the house and it might be haunted? Like for real. And so that's when I got the book within a book structure, not knowing that it was going to almost kill me because it was such a hard thing to do. Like I think it looks effortless in the
Yeah.
reading of it, but my God, because I had to match up
Yeah,
everything.
because you had the book within a book. As you're reading those chapters, they then go into the present day and vice versa. Something happens, then we learn. Yeah, I mean, so this was something where you were writing each section back to back. Like basically, you were writing it. It was a non-linear novel, but you're writing it chapter by chapter to make sure that they fed into each other. If that makes
Yes, I
sense.
had to do, and I had to outline the freak out. I almost said, "Can we swear?" I almost said,
Yeah, absolutely.
I was like, I had to outline the fuck out of this book, basically, and because like I did want it to read like on a granular level, like there are points where like she notices like this armoire is like boarded shut. And then the next chapter is from her father's book in which he's opening the armoire. And like I just like I wanted it to seem like they were in conversation with each other the entire time. And I
Yeah.
wanted the book within a book to be the unreliable narrator.
Yeah. And again, we don't want to get into spoilers, but the reveal, like the reason the book was written and everything else, very yeah. I mean, again, it was one, yeah, very excellent, excellent, my friend. I do want to talk about though just the like the production value, like what kind of conversations were there with the publisher to have those book within a book, like how it was going to look on the page. Now obviously ebook wise is going to look a little bit different, but we
Yeah.
have a title page, we have kind of like the top, the little like headers and stuff. Like I'm assuming in your manuscript you didn't have it looking necessarily like this, but like how did that come about?
I did use a completely different font
Okay.
for both like because I just felt like it was needed just for clarity's sake for my own sanity and maybe for my editors where I used a different font for the book within a book. And I think that just because I did that, they just were like, "Oh, these have to look different. Like this should look like a book within the book." And right, even I even included like the title page, like in like the original manuscript, I had here's the title page, here's the publisher, which I love. Like I'm so proud of the publisher because it's a reference to Jaws,
Mm.
because it's the and I'm blanking on his name. Murray Hamilton played the mayor in Jaws, but Murray Hamilton also sounds like a publisher from like the 90s for some reason.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I was like,
And
that's
going
he's
back
going to be
to
the
the
publisher.
names, how did you come up like the father's name? Where did that come from?
Again, I just wanted it to be something that really stood out.
Yeah.
And Ewan Holt sounded, I don't know, it had a certain ring to it where it sounded like friendly, but it also could sound like, oh, he's a liar. Like, I don't know. Like, I just, I came up with it. I'm like, yeah, this really sounds good. This works.
But from the very beginning of your outline, everything like the ending, the actual like final twist that we get to the end. I mean, was that always there, or were there any things that changed as you were writing it?
That was really always there. The difficulty was I was so far behind on my deadline because that was the year that we bought a house, and a house that needed a whole lot of work. And it really added to the book because all of the frustrations I was having with this house, I put it into the book.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't have snakes, we had bats, but no snakes. But like just this sense of like this house is turning on us. I wanted that to come through.
Oh, also, um, you use some lyrics from The Sound of Music in this. Now, that can be a pain in the ass to use lyrics because sometimes you have to get permission, sometimes you got to pay. Can you talk a little bit about just, and again, we're getting real geeky here. Like, did you did you try to get permission even before trying to add that in? Because it plays such a huge role in the actual book that it would suck if later they're like, nope, you can't do it. Like, then then what are you gonna do?
I It really sucked. Like I like because I didn't get permission beforehand. It was only afterwards where we're like, okay, we need to get permission, and you have to pay for the rights to these.
Mm.
That was the publisher. Maybe things would be different now, but at the time, the publisher was like, "Yeah, we don't pay for the rights to these. That's on the author." I'm like,
They no,
"Oh,
they typically don't. Yeah,
great."
and some places are really cool, and they're like, yeah, go ahead. And other times they want like ridiculous amounts of money.
But we kept it like to a minimum. Like I did have more lyrics than ended up in the book, but I'm like, this is fine. We'll just use 4 lines. It's great. It's fine. But yeah, I we would have been screwed if they had been like, no, you can't use this. I don't know what I would have done.
This is also isn't the first time you reference Sound of Music.
No,
Did I see somewhere that in every book there's a Easter egg of either Judy Garland or Sound of Music,
Julie Andrews.
and how did
There's
that or that's right, Julie Andrews. How did that again? Was that one of those conscious things that you maybe did it in Final Girls, and you're like, oh, let's do it again in in the Last Time I Lied, and then it just became a thing, or like
Yeah,
yeah.
I did it in Final Girls where Quincy's remembering her father because like one of the reasons she's becomes a baker is because like she remembers baking with her father, and he says like a spoonful of sugar, Quincy, the song doesn't lie. And because I'm a big fan of Julie Andrews, I'm a big Mary Poppins fan and a big Sound of Music fan. Like I love the Sound of Music unironically, and people don't believe me when I say that, but like it's true. Like so that was something that, and so like I slipped it in again in The Last Time I Lied, and it's been in every book of mine except With a Vengeance, and that's only because With a Vengeance takes place in 1954,
Yeah.
and it's before Julie Andrews was a thing.
Um, real going back to the book within a book. There's an epigraph here, which I think is the first time you use an epigraph, which is a fictional book. Again, going back to names, Greta Manville, great name. Um, was the epigraph always there? Did that come later where you're like, oh, I'm going to open the book with, and specifically, with what you use? Because it's a couple paragraphs. I mean, it's like three, it's just like 3 paragraphs. It's not like a sentence or whatever. You kind of go in there.
Yeah, that was always there. That was there from the very start, where I just thought it would be cool. Like, okay, this book that takes place in this apartment building, holds a special place in her heart and also adds to the mystique of the building. So let's, get a little taste of what this book is. And I've had people ask me if like the book is real. And I'm like, no, like there's not like which again, I'm like, I guess I did a really good job coming up with like 3 paragraphs of this fake book.
Yeah. All right. So we're chugging along, but we still have some other stuff to go. You're still good to keep going?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Let's take a little break though. So people in the comments real quick. So again, Noah said looking forward to seeing you in August 13th. Sarah says she's on a wait list for Indianapolis. Lisa says she can't wait. Reading since the 1900s says her first book was the only one left and she fell in love with Riley. Tiffany, I think this is one we were discussing the last time I lied. Mind blown emoji. Kathy says, love all your books. Angela says, please come to Anchorage. I'd love to meet you. Please never stop writing. You are the best. Um, have you done any international tours?
No. I've been asked to go to certain festivals overseas. It's a hike. Like
Yeah.
I was asked to go to Sao Paulo, Brazil. I've been asked to go to Poland. I mean, there are plans for me to go to Iceland War and Reykjavik in
Mm.
November. So that would be like my first international event.
And I saw
It's
that
hard.
oh yeah, Writers Digest, you're a keynote speaker. Did that happen yet or is that coming
That
up?
happened on Friday. Yeah, it was fun.
Oh, how was that?
It was nice because one, it was really close by,
Yeah.
and it was a Q&A format, and so it was really just talking about like not my career, not like going through each book like this, but just more about like my experience in the industry because these are all people who, are aspiring writers or trying to break into the industry. And I've had quite a lot of experience with the ins and outs of publishing. And so, I could tell them, like, okay, I was rejected by 110 agents before agent 111 said yes. And
Yeah.
now I'm an international bestseller and she owns her own agency. And so, like, we're like, just things can happen like that. So
I always use you as an example of a writer just, never giving up, just constantly working. And because, yeah, I mean, had you given up after those first three, mysteries, you'd be working at the library.
I think, yeah, and I think that I would be happy, but this is much more cool. This is so much cooler.
Yeah, a little bit, a little bit. All right, so let's get into Survive the Night, which I feel is, I don't want to say a departure for you, but this is your first like kind of like non-linear novel. No, yes, no. This is your first linear novel. This is one where we're not jumping really back and forward in time. Very straightforward. You do
It's
something
third
cool with it
person.
though. You basically, instead of chapter headers, you use like slug lines where it's like, like you're reading a movie script. So you talk about kind of like where this idea came about, and essentially like this takes place. I mean, the main story. Um, you know, over the course of just several hours, the course of a night.
Yeah, it's almost real time. Like Home Before Dark was such a massive undertaking where like I really bit off more than I could chew when I came up with this idea. I'm like, hey, it's going to be a book within a book and it's going to be easy. And it was not easy. And so by the time I finished that book, I was just, I was depleted. Like I had nothing in the tank. And I'm like, okay, my next book is going to be really short and it's going to be real time and it's going to be like 2 characters in a car because I don't have the bandwidth to do anything else. And then it just so happened that COVID hit. And so I was writing it like at the, height of the pandemic. And so no one could go anywhere. Everyone was feeling claustrophobic. And I'm just going to be honest. I think it's my least popular book among readers.
Why do you think that though? I mean, again, compared to the other books you had, it is a little bit different though. And I will say you do take some swings. The word that I want to use And I say this in a loving way is it's audacious. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
you like take some swings where you're like like I sometimes love that kind of like over the top or like you take some swings here. I don't necessarily know if it's it works 100%, but I really loved it. And I love the way just like again the misdirection of things where you think it's one thing because of the setup and everything else. Um, I don't know, why do you think it's one of your more not fan favorites?
I mean, because people are, and this is, I mean, I guess we have to get into, there will be spoilers
Spoiler alert.
because we can't avoid it. And
Yeah.
um, people think Charlie is such a stupid character because they're
Hmm.
like, why doesn't she get out of the car? Just get out of the car. And she gets out of the car and then she gets back into the car and people are like, why did you get back into the car? And like,
Yeah, but you kind of make it. She's doing, you know what I mean? Like as far as because I mean, I had the same I thought where I'm like, why is she? And then, but you kind of make, you like give a reason. People might not like that reason, but like you at least give that reason where you're like, no, this is why she feels that she needs to basically, stay in the car.
and then it gets like really over the top at the end.
But
And
again, you also, and this is interesting in terms of the framing. Did you always have this idea of the framing? Kind of like the prologue and epilogue we find out is, again,
yeah, I
spoiler
mean,
alert, essentially
this
it's
is a
like, oh,
spoiler.
this
It's
is
a
like a,
movie. Yeah.
yeah. So they like
And
were
so
like, yeah,
like
they were embellishing certain things.
yes, and I knew from the start. I'm like, okay, the beginning, the prologue and the epilogue, those are actually Charlie. Everything in between is a movie. And that's why I use the slug lines as from a screenplay and not chapter headings because that was a subtle hint like hint hint this is not real. This is a movie. And I think it went over many people's heads
Yeah.
where people didn't like I was trying to comment on movies and how over the top they get and how sometimes characters make stupid decisions and how like when you're watching a scary movie you're like screaming at the screen like don't go in there, the killer's in there, what are you stupid, like I wanted all of that. And I don't think it quite translated is what I'm trying to say with
Yeah.
some readers love it. Like
Yeah.
people will come up
Well,
to me and like, "Survive the Night is my favorite," as if it's like a dirty secret or
that's
something.
a dirty secret. I love it. Yeah. Well, in the chat, Shara says she disagrees. Survive the Night's one of her favorites.
Well, thank you.
So, well, and then going back to epigraphs, you use a quote here from All About Eve. Was
Hmm.
that, how did you, again, it always kind of curious to me when writers use epigraphs, and sometimes people like writers use epigraphs before, the beginning of every chapter, which I think is like, oh man,
That's
that's a
too
lot.
much.
But
Yeah.
like, yeah, I mean, so how did you come up with that one? What, like, did you have other ideas in mind?
Oh no, that one, that was the one where I'm like, yeah, because it's a bumpy night. Fasten your seatbelts, folks. This is a bumpy night for Charlie.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And
it
then
just it
Survive the
felt
Night, was
perfect.
that, and again, going back to titles, was there any other alternative titles before Survive the Night?
Yeah, I was gonna do Fade to Black, but that had been taken. Then
No,
this was
yeah, this
another
was
one where
good.
we're like we just need a title. But the irony is that we came up with the title and announced it, and there was like another book coming out or right around the same time called Survive the Night. And I'm like, oh shit. So
Yeah. All right, let's get into House Across the Lake. You and I in the green room, we were discussing this. Again, talking about some swings, some major swings, which I loved it. I also feel like the writing style changed a little bit. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like, and a lot of your books have a lot of white space. I'm a huge fan of white space, but more so in this one. A lot of, very short, almost like 1, 2 word paragraphs or whatever. But let's talk a little bit first about just kind of like, again, coming from Survive the Night, transitioning to this one, maybe like the Seed, if I remember correctly. I think this was the first time I saw you at Midtown. You were there for that. And you remember you talked about how you and your husband were vacationing on a lake, and then that's where the idea came from.
yeah, we it was 2020 still thick of the pandemic. I had just finished Survive the Night, and I needed to get out of this house. Like, I just had to get out. And I'm like, okay, we can't go anywhere, but what if we rent a different house and spend a weekend in a different house? And I found this lake house in Vermont, rented it, and we arrived, and that had this back porch that was right against the lake, overlooking the water. I poured myself a bourbon, went out, sat in a rocking chair, and I was watching the houses across the lake, and they were all lit up. And uh, like it's not like pervier, but you like when you see like a lit window, like on the dressing, you're like, oh, what's going on there? And so like I just leaned forward with my bourbon, and I was just like, I wonder what's going on in that house. And instantly I'm like, oh, there's a book here. There is definitely a book here. Rear Window on a Lake was like it just popped into my head like that. And then I decided to have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
And so what we were talking about in the green room was I am fairly I don't pay attention as much now. But like word trickles through how people are responding to your books or how they feel about you or how they feel about and so like I knew there was like some scuttlebutt out there like, oh, Riley Sager, so derivative. And I'm like, oh, okay, you want derivative. I'm going to basically write the woman in the window, put it on a lake, and it's going to be like so derivative and follow all of this, and she's going to behave like so insanely, like just so crazy drunk that like you wouldn't believe. And then I'm going to pull the rug out from under you 2/3 of the way through, and you will have no idea what's happening. And it was very liberating. Like once I latched onto this idea, I was like, oh, this could be fun. And as I was writing it, I knew that like some people were going to hate it. And that was made me like happy for some reason. Like I don't know why. Like I want all my readers to like love all of my books, but I know that that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I just decided to be audacious. And normally I sometimes second guess myself, or I'm like, am I doing the right thing here? Or maybe I should play it safer here. From the very start, I told my editor and my agent we had to have a special phone call where I was like, okay, listen, guys, this is what I want to do. Do I have your okay? And they're like, yes, do it. And so
So
I
there
just
was no
ran with it.
hesitation at all. There was no like,
None, none. And I like to their credit, there was none. And I knew when I was writing it, I'm like, this could be a very big book because I think there's going to be a lot of hate readers. And I say this and like I don't want to like I don't want to bring up this particular book because the author is a fantastic author and he's written many great books. He's written one of my favorite books. Um, but when I read Shutter Island, and some people love Shutter Island, and good for them, good for them. I did not like Shutter Island by Dennis Lehane.
yeah.
But as soon as I finished reading it, I gave it to a friend of mine, and I was like, "You have to read this book." I didn't like it,
And they
and
loved it.
so like that's a thing where like I think people do.
Yeah.
And by
Did
the
that
way,
friend
Dennis
like it or
Lehane's an
not?
amazing writer. Everyone, he's far better than I am. So like,
Yeah. Did the friend also agree that they didn't like it?
I think he liked it
Yeah.
actually. Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting. So, okay, so you knew from the very beginning, obviously, this is what's going to happen. This is what you're leading to,
it's going
and
to be very
in the green room,
divisive.
yeah. And we talked a little bit in the green room too. Is for me, when it comes to twists, at least personally, I always want to make sure it's like I'm not cheating the reader. Like like you want to have this like fine balance between providing information, but not providing everything, but it's still there. Because I feel like some of our peers sometimes cheat and they kind of have a big twist at the end, and it's like there's just no way you could even predict that or have any idea because it's like they just withheld all this information. Where I feel like with this going back, like you do a really good job of not cheating. I mean, like everything is there. Like again, going back to that outline, I mean, were you still really outlining these, or and then also at the same time too? There's no chapter headings here. This is very unique for you. You had be, you have like before, now, but there's no chapter. Like what was the thinking behind that?
I just wanted it to flow, basically. Like I wanted, and you mentioned with like the white space and the short, like I almost wanted to be really in Casey's inebriated brain, like the whole time. And so that like you're seeing what she's seeing and hearing what she's hearing. And that's why like there are certain moments where like just one paragraph is like, no, wait,
Yeah.
she sees it. I see him. Wait, no, I don't see him. Oh my God, he's watching me. And then, like that kind of thing where I wanted to be very visceral and of the moment.
Yeah, you did. There was like, holy shit. You put those on
Yes.
two different lines.
Yes. That kind of
I love
stuff
that.
where it's just,
Yeah.
I was very playful in the writing of this book. And I wrote it so fast. Like normally my deadline is, the day after Labor Day. I think it was like June 10th. I was done. And I sent it to my editor. I'm like, surprise, it's done like 3 months early. Here it is. Enjoy. And it was a blast. I wish every book was as fun as I had writing The House Across the Lake.
Yeah. And in the comments, we got Keith says House Across the Lake is a masterpiece, completely bonkers, and he loved every minute of it.
Thank you so much. And people did like it. We recently surpassed 1 million copies sold.
Wow. Wow. It's huge. Congratulations. So
So
actually, if I remember
people,
correctly too, this was multiple weeks New York Times bestseller list, right? Like your prior books, had you had multiple weeks, or like was this the
no,
first book that
all
was
of
just
them.
multiple weeks?
This was 4 weeks. Yeah, 4 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, which was I'd only been on 1 week per book before, and so it was quite a change of pace, and so I'm really proud of that book. I love it, but I also understand why some people do not love it, and it's okay. We can agree to disagree.
And would we say that again, having what that book was number six, number six, when we talk about big swings, I mean, really go the paranormal, supernatural, where again, some people could say, Home Before Dark might be supernatural, whatever else. I don't really view it personally that way, but like that was your first kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of like the first supernatural, very at least in your
Confirmation,
face.
yeah, of like this is supernatural. This is not of this earth. Yeah, and we did it partly because I felt like I had been Scooby Dooing it
Hmm,
too much,
I can
where
see
it's
that.
like, yeah, there might be a logical explanation for what the supposed supernatural thing is happening here. And so this time I'm like, no, there's no conceivable explanation except that it's
Yeah.
supernatural.
Yeah, it's great. All right, so then the next one, the only one left, which again, I mean, I think has become your biggest book. Like you look on Audible in terms of just the reviews, or I mean, it looks like that's like your biggest audiobook by far. Um, where did this idea come from? Because this, I mean, you had played with time in the past. Like Survive the Night takes place in the past, which my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, you know, to write that type of book, you had to basically like cell phones couldn't exist.
Right.
Like that's
That's
kind
why I
of a
did it for one of the
yeah,
reasons. Yeah, because she could have been like, "Hi, I'm in a car with a guy who might be a serial killer. Could you come pick me up?" Like she couldn't do
yeah.
that. Yeah.
So and then this is
Same
one where
reason.
you kind of go back in time.
I knew like it was obviously like inspired by Lizzie Borden. I was watching, I think it was the show Mysteries at the Museum, which is a great show, and seeing something about the Lizzie Borden murders. And to me, Lizzie Borden didn't interest me so much, but I was thinking about how old was she when she died? And did she need someone to take care of her? And who was that person? And how did that person get that job of taking care of Lizzie Borden? And so it quickly went from like Lizzie Borden book to Lizzie Borden's nurse book. And the first thing I wrote was the rhyme that's in the book. At 17, Lenora Hope hung her sister with a rope, killed her father with a knife, took her mother's happy life. It wasn't me, Lenora said, but she's the only one not dead. That was the very first thing I wrote about this book. I just really like the idea of having a nurse come into this big, crooked house to take care of this wheelchair-bound woman who may or may not be a murderess.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of a struggle at first because I thought it really sucked in the beginning. Like, I was very unsure about it. And I think because I had been so certain about what I was doing with The House Across the Lake that when it came time to do this one, I was like full of self-doubt again. So, and I never do this, but with this one, I sent like the first 150 pages to my agent and my editor early, like way early, and said, like, please be honest. Does this suck? Like, is there not like a book here? And they both read it and went, this is fantastic. Keep doing what you're doing. And I had to say, like, I don't know what I'm doing. That's why I'm asking you. Like,
So, okay, so then that structure was always there from the very beginning.
the
And then
structure was
again,
always there. Yeah.
the spoiler alert, we find out the letter that, or like, with what she's typing is, again, I don't want to give out too much, although at this point it feels like everyone has read this book because this has been your most popular book. Why do you think? Oh, and let's go back to the rhyme. So you wrote, okay, because I wanted to ask you, like, was that something like, did you have somebody help you with that? So you wrote that rhyme. Did it just come naturally, or like, was it something you had to think about for a while?
No, that was just one afternoon. I'm like, okay, what your job today is to come up with a creepy rhyme reminiscent of Lizzie Borden had an axe. And that's going to be the rhyme written about this woman. And that's why, like, I kind of picked the name because it sort of fit the rhyme, like, because hope rhymed with rope. And that was really why her last name is Lenora Hope. Um yeah, it's and then yes, like the book, there's another book within a book aspect to it, which I swore I was never going to do again after Home Before Dark. And lo and behold, I was doing it again, and I'm like, God. But it worked out really well. And for me, I was very surprised. I mean, I thought it was good. I was proud of it, and as I was excited about it, I wasn't expecting this kind of reception. I knew that the final page was kind of my secret weapon. Like the last page, I wrap up the book with one final page that's unlike anything I've done before or since. And it just ties everything together in a satisfying and emotional way. And
Yeah.
when my editor read it and she said, the last page made me cry. And I was like, oh, maybe we have something here. Okay. I was
I
not
listened to the
expecting
audio.
it to.
Yeah, I listened to the audiobook, so I didn't realize that it's like, yeah, it's like framed
Yeah.
as, an actual interesting.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the comments, we have people, what do we have here? Tiffany says the only one left is her favorite book and that she's loaned it out 5 times, made everyone read it.
Thank you,
Reading
Tiffany.
since the 1900s says it's a favorite book. It's brilliant. Angela says the best book ever. She made 4 non-readers in her life read it, and they all loved it. Shara says she absolutely blew me away. The gasping out and talking out repeatedly. I recommend it to everyone. So yeah, I mean, has anyone ever like again? This has been your. I mean, some books just hit, and sometimes it's you never know why. But like again, any inkling of why specifically this one has been the one that just
I
universally it
think
seems like everyone loves it.
I think one is there are twists. There are many twists. But also like character plays a big part in all of it as well. And also, I think just the setting, Hope's End, like
Yeah,
when
I wanted to talk about that. It's one of those like, plot devices of man versus man, man versus himself, man versus nature. And this is specifically, I mean, was it always the idea of this house just on this cliff that is basically
yes,
eroding?
I wanted to set it in some place that was as decrepit and crumbling as Lenora Hope seemed to be.
Mm.
And I was thinking of like the fall of the House of Usher, where this idea of like every time Kit learns a little bit more about the truth, the house falls apart a little bit more. And so that's why like it's I don't know if it's that noticeable, but like she'll find something out and then like the next morning there'll be like more cracks in the wall or more shingles are falling off the roof or a big ass sinkhole just opens up nearby. And so like I wanted it to get like more and more fraught where it's like not only does she feel like can I trust Lenora? Can I trust everyone in this place? But also, can I trust the physical space that I'm residing in at the moment?
And of course, the twist, kind of spoiler alert here, but like our main character, her relation to like again, like was that something from the beginning you knew what was going to happen, or I don't know, like had there ever been twists that as you're writing the book, all of a sudden maybe you thought that the twist was going to be one thing, and then you were like, oh shit, we're going to go a completely different direction. It's going to be better.
No, but I do add on. Like this was a case where I did a lot of adding on, where I knew like okay, here's the big twist. What else can I do? And then like slowly like I've heard from some people like there's like one too many twists at the end of this book. And I'm like, is there though? I don't know. Maybe there. I don't. I love it, so I don't care. But
Yeah, everyone seems to like it. And someone mentions too in the comments that they think that kind of the gothic setting maybe appeals to a lot of people as well.
yeah, I was definitely going for like Rebecca vibes and House of Usher vibes and just this gothic sense of just everything is wrong with this place. And
Yeah.
yet there's also like an emotional through line. Like I again, we're going to spoiler stuff, but like you know, I think the characters of Kit and Lenora like they find each other. Like they were both missing something in their lives and they find it unexpectedly with each other. And Kit
Yeah.
was missing a mother figure, Lenora was missing a child. Like it just so like they really found and that was not intentional. Like I discovered that in the writing process. It was like, oh, these are two lost women who find each other. They first have to like wade through lots of mistrust and lies and deceit and and scariness to get there.
And going back to names, of course, Lenore is a good name for the character, but Kit, where did Kitteridge? I mean, where did that come from? The only thing I can think of is like, um, um, shit, what's the name? Olive Kitteridge is the book, but like, where did you come up with that name?
I wanted something that sounded nursey, and so like I just like emergency kit. Kit.
Love it. Oh man, we're going over, it, but I wanted to go real back to this real quick about epigraphs. You use a Taylor Swift quote
Yes.
here. But I don't see like in the like, did you have to get permission for this?
You don't for epigraphs. You don't,
Really?
which is good. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
At least I don't think. I mean, it was clear. Like the Penguin Random House, like there were no issues with it whatsoever.
Yeah. Okay,
But I
let's
think
because I
she
don't.
knows about me because of that.
Oh,
Like I wasn't invited to the wedding. What? Jeez. But no, I
I think you
do
were the
like.
only one who wasn't. I
I
think everyone
know
else was there.
because people ask me like, does she know about you? And I'm like, I think she might. Like I think she does.
All right, so middle of the night. This is your for the longest time. All main characters were all, and I mean, Home Before Dark. Half the book was narrated by a male author, but essentially the majority. I mean, we had a the first novel that you had where the protagonist essentially is male. Again, talk a little bit about just the seed of this and then why you chose, instead of, basically kind of like stepping away from what I guess this is number seven? No, yes, no,
Eight,
six, eight, eight. This is number
eight.
eight.
Yes.
You decided that, you know what, the main character again is going to be a male instead of kind of like, mixing it up a little bit.
There were two reasons. I mean, one, this one wasn't. It takes place in my house, basically, and in my cul-de-sac and in my backyard. Um, I was one night I couldn't sleep. It was like 2 in the morning. I was awake, looking out the bedroom window, and the bedroom window is on the second floor, overlooking the entire cul-de-sac that I live on in Princeton, New Jersey. And across the cul-de-sac, the security light above like the neighbor's garage flicked on and nothing set it off. There was no one there like to set it off. And I'm like, that's strange. That light just went on for no reason. And then it went out, and then a couple minutes later, the one on the house next door went on. And I'm like, that's very strange. Why did that flick on? Like, and then it happened at the next neighbor's house. And I was like, what is going on? Like, it's 2 in the morning on a summer night, and like the security lights are just going off above everyone's garage. I'm sure it was like a bug or a bat or maybe like a deer that was just out of range that I couldn't see. But it was very strange. And my first thought was like, oh, there's a ghost on the cul-de-sac. And from
Exactly.
there, this whole book was like, haunted cul-de-sac book. Might as well set it here. And, it just came like, yeah, a boy vanished from a tent in the backyard. Might as well make it my backyard, which was kind of weird. Instead of being like setting a crime in my own backyard, like literally. But I just wanted to write about it. Just felt like it was a good time to do it. I'm like, if it's set in my neighborhood, I might as well make the main character kind of like me. He's 10 years younger than me, but like just, yeah, he's going to be a 40-year-old dude whose best friend vanished and now he's been dealing with the fallout for all these years.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, you basically, I maybe you didn't have to, but you went and talked to all your neighbors because you were kind of using them as, I mean, like you wanted to make sure they
Oh
were
no, I didn't
aware.
ask them. I didn't ask them a thing.
But did you say something? For some reason, I thought you let them know at some point, like, hey,
Well, after like some of them, like afterwards, where yeah, I was like, I gave like the next door neighbors like the book, and I'm like, you'll recognize, just FYI, like it's here. And then another neighbor, like she saw me because I was like watering plants, and she came by. She's like, "Oh, I just bought your new book. I started reading it." I'm like, "Oh, great! You know it's here, right?" And she's like, "Oh yeah." Like, it's just she's like, "Yeah, I could tell."
and then the jumping back and forth in time again, was that one of those things in terms of the part of the outline? I guess my question with the jumping back and forth in time, are there times where you might just put like a placeholder, like, okay, we're going to do a flashback here, but I don't necessarily know what that is yet. Or again, as you're writing it, okay, we talked about like Home Before Dark, specifically, those were kind of playing off each other, the past and present. And the same thing, I guess, too, anytime you do flashbacks, they are kind of still playing off at times. But I don't know, like, are there times where you maybe know, like, okay, we're going to have a flashback here, but I don't necessarily know yet what's going to happen. I'm going to come back to that.
No, but I will add additional ones in. Like the reason I use that structure so much is because it is a guaranteed driver of suspense. Like
Yeah.
it just when I was talking to the Writer's Digest people the other day, where I was like, like here's what you need to do, or here's what I recommend that you can do if you're writing suspense and want a book to be very suspenseful. Make sure that you know that shit goes down in the past, but don't tell them exactly what. Just hint at it, and then it's affecting the present day, and then just follow those two storylines until they connect and the past clashes with the present, and then both things are resolved. And I'm like, It is a guaranteed driver of suspense. I try to mix it up, like sometimes it's a book within a book, or sometimes it's like flashbacks to various people around a neighborhood, or sometimes it's, the diary of a wheelchair bound woman talking about her past. And so, like, but I always try to, like, just do that same bit of format where, like, something happened, there's more to the story, but you're not going to find out what it is until you get to the end of the book. And it's affecting the present day, and you don't know how they're going to collide until they do. So that was why I did it with this too.
Um, yeah. And then the most recent, with a Vengeance. Again, when you talk about, going back and forth in time, why did you decide to go really far back in time with this? I mean, I mean, in terms of middle of the night, yeah, I mean, there's flashbacks there for when they were kids, but here again, even like farther back than Survive the Night.
I was watching, I think it might have been Bullet Train, and it was like the third movie in a row that I'd watched with like a really great train scene. Because there was like, I mean, Bullet Train is all on a train, but there's the Mission Impossible movie with the great climax on the train.
Mm.
The Indiana Jones movie, the last one, started with like this 20-minute sequence on a train. So I'd seen like all these great things, like trains are cool. Trains are suspenseful. You can do a lot of stuff on trains. I think I'm going to set my next book entirely on a train. And the trouble with that, as I soon learned, was logistically, it's so difficult because there's nowhere for characters to go. And so, and also you have to come up with all the reasons why they can't get off the train.
Yeah.
Like, so I had to address all of this stuff before like the plot could really get going. I had to be like, this is why they're on the train. This is why they can't get off the train. You can think that they're going to be able to get off the train, but they can't because this and this and this and this and this. And I had to address all of them. So that was one of the reasons why I said it in the past, because, well, also trains were more luxurious back then. Like, no disrespect to Amtrak, it would have been a pretty sad little book. Like, if everyone's just crammed into like an Acela express car. And so I wanted to like bring back some of the glamour of like mid-century train travel. And so that was really the reason why it was set in 1954.
And specifically 1954 was, I mean, had you thought about doing any other decade? I mean, why specifically
Well,
54?
specifically 54 because one, trains were kind of on their last legs then. Like planes were starting to take over. And so the wonderful train system in the US was on the decline. And also, and I say this and people are like, what? In the movie White Christmas, which is released in 1954, there's a scene early on where they get on a train from Florida to Vermont. And they give away their tickets to the two singers so like they're on this train, and the conductor is like, sorry boys, there's no more room on this train, it's all booked, but if you buy two tickets you can sit up in the club car for the whole journey. And they're like, fine, we'll do that. You do not see a single person on that train other than them, like the entire time. So like this full booked train, not a single room left, is completely empty in the world of this movie. And I'm like, okay, it's going to be on an empty train. And so I have to explain why the train is empty. And I just like the idea of an empty train in 1954 because of White
Yeah.
Christmas.
And did you know from the start that it was just going to be like, third person, multiple different characters?
It had to be because there was just stuff I had to relay to the reader that Anna, the main character, couldn't know and wouldn't know.
Yeah.
And so I envisioned it as like and then there were none on a train, basically.
Yeah. And then, So we talked about how Survive the Night, takes place over the course essentially of a night. Here, I feel like this is probably your first novel that has a ticking clock, where we
Yes.
are essentially, I mean, like obviously it takes place over a certain amount of time, but I mean, like we have, starting 7 p.m., 13 hours to Chicago, and it is ticking down as it's getting closer and closer to Chicago. Had you always known specifically that that was going to be part of the kind of the momentum of the story?
Yeah, because I knew I couldn't really do the whole flashback dual narrative structure with this one. And so because of just, trains run on a schedule. And so when you board a train, you know when it's scheduled to arrive at its destination. And so I'm like, oh, that could be a good driver of suspense instead to just have this ticking clock. And I actually fudged it a little bit. Um, I think back then, because I did look up like train timetables from the 50s, and it was a little bit longer to get from Philadelphia to Chicago than it is in the book. But I'm like, it's an
Yeah.
express train. It's going faster. It doesn't have any stops. So it will get there like 4 hours earlier than it would normally. Because
Yeah, when it yeah,
it
when it
just
comes
felt
to
like there were too
research,
many chapters if I went hour by hour by hour. So I
right.
had to like just really
Yeah, when it comes
condense
to
it.
research for these books where you are going back, like, The Only One Left and With a Vengeance, whereas opposed to, I think, Survive the Night, I mean, what, that's the 90s. You grew up in the 90s. I grew up in the 90s. You remember how life
Oh,
was. But
absolutely.
obviously,
Yeah.
back in the 50s, I mean, you have to, I don't know, like, were you doing a lot of research or just kind of just as much as you needed? You didn't really want the research to get in the way of a fun story.
I did more research than normal. I learned a lot about the train industry at the time. Did I use much of it? No, because it did get in the way of the story. And so
Yeah.
I did fudge certain facts and figures. And I know there's probably like train aficionados who have read this book and been like, I just got it all wrong. It's all wrong. And then like close the book in disgust and, throws it out the window or something. But like, I, for the sake of the story I was trying to tell, like I couldn't base it in the reality, but at least I knew what the reality was. So I still find it helpful even though I didn't use it. Sometimes it's
Right.
helpful to know what you can't use, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we are kind of way over. I appreciate your time. I know you're a very busy man, but those were your first nine Riley Sager
9
novels.
books. How did it
And now
happen?
we
I
are
don't know.
talking a little bit about the 10th, comes out next week. The Unknown. Again, this is, you wanted to really go big with this. This was going to be number 10. Congratulations. Just a little bit. What can you tell us a little bit to get people excited about this?
Yeah, it's I read 20 odd years ago. I was just looking at creepy websites. I For some reason Weird NJ always sticks in my head, but like I don't think I found this particular story on Weird NJ, but it was a site similar. There was like the swamp in the middle of nowhere, and there's this big tree, and someone hung white dresses from the tree in the middle of this swamp in the middle of nowhere. And no one knows who did it, why they did it, what the meaning behind it is. And it just was such a creepy image that I was like, I want to use this someday. I didn't know how, I didn't know where, I didn't know why. And when it came time for like book 10, I'm like, what's something cool that I could do? I'm like, yeah, the dresses in the tree. So it's about this place in Vermont called New Avalon. It's an island on a lake, and it was a commune for mediums in the 20s. And they've all vanished without a trace in 1926. And the only traces of them were their dresses hanging in a tree in the middle of the island. And that's it. No one knows what happened to them. But one of them did leave behind a diary. And through this diary, a filmmaker decided to make a movie. So they based a screenplay on this diary. And so the cast of this movie who are playing these characters go to this island for a week as part of research for the movie. And then they start vanishing one by one. And so it's history repeating itself. Is the island haunted? Is someone trying to derail the movie? Is there a killer on the loose? Who knows? But that's the plot of The Unknown.
And that comes out next week. You
Comes
have
out the
that.
fourth.
Do you
Craziness.
still have the oh yeah, not next. Do you have a copy of the hardcover there with
I
you?
do. Yeah.
And again, you guys went like all out. It has the nice edges there
It
and
has
the
red edges and it has like end papers and like the cover you can't really see it, but it's sort of like is shimmery and sparkly and yeah, we wanted to do it was always like a thank you to readers. Like we always want new readers, but in this case we're like, how do we say thank you to people who've been with me for 10 books now, whether they started when Final Girls first came out or just discovered me a couple years ago, but like how do we thank everyone? And so
yeah,
we decided to just go all out and do something special.
yeah. And I mean, I feel honored because I wrote a novel called New Avalon. So I love that you based the island off
It's
of
an homage to
the
you.
Yes, thank you. No, but where did that name come from? I mean, how did you decide to call the island or the New Avalon?
Because an Avalon of myth, it's an island on a lake where these learned women are who know like the secrets of like the world and spiritual things like that. And so I'm like, hey, that's a cool name for a commune of mediums on an island and a lake. Like, let's just call it New Avalon. And it just sort of like had a nice ring to it, as you
Yeah,
well know. Yeah.
absolutely. All right. So again, I don't want to keep you much longer. This is not the Joe Rogan experience. We do not want to hold you hostage for 3 hours, but I knew we were going to go over. I didn't think we were going to go over this long, but we did talk about all your books. The newest one, the Unknown, out next week. Pre-order if you have not done so already. Riley's going to be on tour. Most of them are sold out, but is there any ones that are still open?
Last time I checked, I think New York, that's hosted by the Strand, still has tickets. And it's the store is an unlikely story. It's in Massachusetts, but the event is off-site, right over the border in Rhode Island.
Perfect.
And there
And then I
might be a
always
couple
ask.
tickets in Arizona left, but
Oh, okay.
they were
Perfect.
going very fast.
And then just real quick, I always like to ask, like, has there been anything you've listened to, read, watched that you really dug that you want to recommend to anybody?
Um, do I have it with me? Well, recommend Widow's Bay. Everyone just watch Widow's Bay
Widow's
on
Bay
Apple
is
TV.
amazing.
Just so good. I can't tell you how geeked out I was when I noticed that the creator of Widow's Bay was following me on Instagram. I was just like, "Oh my god, what the what?" Like I couldn't believe it because like I am such a Widow's Bay fan.
Did you see that script? Her original script was a writing sample because she wanted to get hired by Parks and Rec. I mean, it was like a very different, but like that's how it started as a Parks and Rec spec script.
Well, and this is why like Parks and Rec might be like my favorite show. It's definitely in my top 5 favorite shows of all time. And so when I saw like before it came out, like the comparison of like Widow's Bay is like Parks and Recreation, but if Stephen King wrote it, and I was like, sign me up. I might love this more than I've loved anything in my life. Like so, it just that was all it took. It was like just Stephen King writes Parks and Recreation. I'm like, yes, please.
They do such a great job, and I've heard Katie Dipple talk about this, where kind of like that balance of just the humor and the horror, where even like there are times where it's like so, like the tension is so high, And then, because I'm thinking of the scene where, again, I don't want to give spoiler alerts, but the main character, Matthew Rhys's character, he's sitting there with somebody else. It's a very tense scene. And then what's her face comes in because she forgot her purse. And it's just like these little things that just, that
Or
like, but I mean,
or just things like the because she knows, and like the whole all of them know like what the tropes are, and like so like their boogeyman episode where she's being chased by like the mass killer, and it's just hysterical because like it's the static shot and she runs past screaming, and then there's just nothing in the frame for like 5 seconds until the killer lumbers through going so slowly, and it's so hysterical. And just throwaway lines, like my favorite line
you
in the
had your
show.
qualms.
Hmm?
You
No,
had
not the
your
qualms.
qualms.
That's a good one. And
Okay.
that when she's just flipping through the photo album, and she's like, "Oh, he was the love of my life. He was bit by an animal and then became that animal." And then she doesn't elaborate whatsoever. She just moves on, and you're like, it's brilliance. Yeah,
It is a show. I even told my wife, I think we were a couple episodes in, I was like, this is a show I'm going to rewatch again, probably pretty soon.
yeah,
Once like all the episodes are out, because there's so much there. It's so layered, especially like the hotel scene or the hotel episode, where what's his face goes in the room and they like lock, like the, I guess the manager,
yes.
and then they like keep him in there for like a couple seconds. But then when they open the door, he was like, why'd you do that?
And the room
It's
is like,
like, it's,
yeah, it's all just it leaves. I love this sense of like, and I know it frustrates some people to not have things explained. I love these unexplained, unelaborated things, like just like the hint that like this is going on all the time, and like you won't get all the answers because we rarely get all the answers in life. Like that's one question I get from a lot of readers is what happened to Jules's sister in Lock Every Door? Because her sister went missing when she was a teenager. She was never seen again. And I never say what happens to her because Jules doesn't know what happens to her. And that's life. Like sometimes you just don't have an answer.
yeah. All right, I don't want to keep you any longer. Thank you everyone for of course tuning
Yes,
in.
thank you, everyone.
And again, the newest book, The Unknown. Pre-order that if you haven't. We want to get Riley to number one, to be a New York to be a number one New York Times bestseller. That is the goal right now. So,
My
Riley,
publisher
thank
would
you
be
so
so
much.
happy if that happens. I'm like, it would be cool. It's not my main goal. Like, but my publisher is like, yes, please.
Um, all right. Again, thank you so much, everybody, and go follow Riley on social media and
Thanks, everyone.
Instagram, Facebook, and
Instagram
yeah,
and Facebook. That's it.
awesome. So we'll see everybody next time. Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.